Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving deep into the world of debut novelist Mark L. Brooks and his journey to publishing Laying Autumn's Dust. You've sent us, well, some really fascinating articles, really, about Brooks and his background. And wow, it seems like you're in for a real treat, a captivating Southern mystery with a twist.
It's always so fascinating to see how an author's life, kind of seeps into their work, wouldn't you say? And this combination of personal history, a touch of Southern charm, and a good mystery, definitely a recipe for a compelling read.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We know that Brooks grew up in Puddin Ridge. It's in the Sand Mountain area of Alabama, right? Which, as I understand it, became the inspiration for the setting of Laying Autumn's Dust.
Hmm.
But here's where it gets interesting. He actually spent 15 years working on this story as a short story, before even expanding it into a novel over the past 5 years. Talk about dedication.
Oh, absolutely. It really speaks volumes about his commitment to his craft, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you can see how this passion for storytelling, well, it seems to have deep roots for him. Growing up, Brooks's mother was a big reader, and a particular high school English teacher, it seems, left a lasting impact on him as well.
It's funny how certain books can really stay with you, you know? And speaking of which, the articles mention that Brooks was really into The Prince of Tides and The Great Gatsby growing up, even using a quote from Gatsby in Laying Autumn's Dust.
Oh, that's fascinating. It makes you wonder about the connections he sees between the two stories. Fitzgerald's exploration of wealth and illusion, set against the backdrop of the Jazz Age. And then you have Brooks's own tale of secrets and shifting perspectives in the rural South. There's a real sense of literary lineage there, I think.
Right, like he's drawing inspiration from these greats while forging his own path. And it wasn't just those early influences either. Brooks further honed his craft at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, where he earned his English degree and then later a master's with a focus on literary studies.
That's right, and it was actually during his time at university that a professor gave him a piece of advice. A piece of advice that has become, well, almost a guiding principle for his writing, it seems.
Oh, do tell.
Prune, 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 the professor said. Cut away the unnecessary, refine the language, make every word count.
Prune, prune, prune. Sounds intense, but also kind of brilliant. And it clearly resonated with Brooks. But get this, before he was a published novelist, Brooks wore many hats. He taught at UTC and Sneed State Community College, and even, believe it or not, spent some time in the call center world.
That's right. It seems life had other plans for him, at least for a while. The article mentioned he's a passionate trail runner, did you see that? And spent 17 years in Colorado, really embracing that outdoor lifestyle.
Talk about a change of pace. It makes you wonder how those experiences, those different landscapes and lifestyles, how might they have influenced his writing,
Absolutely. But family called him back home in 2016 when his father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And it was during this challenging time, you see, while caring for his father, that he found himself fully immersed in writing Laying Autumn's Dust.
Wow, what a poignant turning point in his life. So he's back home facing this deeply personal challenge, and he finally dives headfirst into this novel. It couldn't have been an easy story to write, especially with that emotional backdrop. What can you tell us about his writing process?
Well, you see, he took a very deliberate approach to structuring the narrative, opting to tell the story from three distinct first-person perspectives. Jesse, the main character, his mother, Abigail, and his father, Donnie.
Wait, hold on. Three different characters telling the same story. That's ambitious.
Yeah.
Was that always the plan?
You would think, right. But it actually wasn't part of his original vision at all. A friend of his suggested a murder mystery angle, you see. And Brooks, well, he found himself drawn to the idea of weaving this mystery through the lens of these different characters.
You've got to love it when a little feedback sparks a big creative breakthrough. So he has this murder mystery, and he's telling it through the eyes of three different characters. How on earth did he juggle those different perspectives and make sure they each felt distinct?
He had a couple of tricks up his sleeve. One of them was this really interesting technique. He would read his work backward.
Read backward, like start at the last sentence and work his way to the beginning. You're kidding.
No,
Yeah.
seriously. He said it helped him to catch inconsistencies and maintain a fresh perspective on the language. By disrupting the flow, he could focus on the mechanics of each sentence, each word, and make sure the voices stayed true to the characters.
Wow, that's brilliant. I never would have thought of that. It's like tricking your brain into being extra vigilant. I'm
Yeah.
starting to understand how he creates these layers in his writing.
Exactly. And speaking of layers, the way he uses those multiple perspectives, well, it isn't just a stylistic choice. It's fundamental to the themes he's exploring.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Each character in Laying Autumn's Dust is unreliable in their own way, you see. They have their own biases, their own secrets, their own versions of the truth. And by presenting these contrasting viewpoints, well, Brooks forces the reader to confront the subjectivity of experience.
He's making us question everything we thought we knew, right? Like, whose version of the story do we believe?
Yeah.
And is there even such a thing as one objective truth?
Exactly. He's asking us to consider the possibility that truth is often a matter of perspective. And that's a powerful message, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's like he's holding up a mirror to our own lives and
Yeah.
asking, how often do we jump to conclusions based on our limited perspectives?
Mm-hmm.
How often do we miss the nuances, the complexities of a situation because we're so stuck in our own heads?
Right. He's challenging us to be more empathetic, more open to different viewpoints, to recognize that there's always more to the story than meets the eye. And honestly, I think that's what makes Lang Autumn's Dust such a compelling read.
It's not just a mystery. It's a reflection on how we perceive the world around us.
I love that. So we've talked about his journey to becoming an author, his unique writing process, and the deeper themes he's exploring. But what about the story itself?
Well, Laying Autumn's Dust, it isn't just a meditation on perspective. It's also a suspenseful and atmospheric murder mystery set against the backdrop of rural northeast Alabama, a place deeply steeped in tradition, and where the past seems to linger in the very air.
And from what I've read, Brooks is very intentional about capturing the authentic voice of that region. Tell me more about that.
Well, he wanted to portray the characters in their dialogue with honesty and respect, without making it a distraction for the reader. It's a delicate balance to strike, really. But he manages to weave those linguistic nuances into the narrative seamlessly, adding another layer of authenticity to the story. It's like he's painting a picture with words, right?
Yeah.
You can practically hear those southern accents jumping off the page. And speaking of setting, the articles mention that while the story is, firmly rooted in the rural South, it also has this timeless quality about it.
Absolutely. Brooks has talked about how parts of rural Alabama and Georgia, well, they feel like stepping back in time, which allows his story to exist in this space where the passage of time is a little more fluid, don't you think?
That's fascinating. It's like he's created this pocket of the past where the modern world just fades away. It adds to the mystery, don't you think? But hold on, we've been talking a lot about the setting, the characters, the themes. Can you give us a little taste of the plot without, giving too much away?
Well, at its heart, Laying Autumn's Dust is a story about family secrets, betrayal, and the weight of the past. The story centers around Jesse, a young man grappling with a difficult past. And as he tries to piece together the truth about a crime that has haunted his family for years, he uncovers secrets that threaten to unravel everything he thought he knew.
Ooh, that's good. It's like we're right there with him, trying to untangle the truth. And with 3 different perspectives swirling around, I can only imagine how difficult it must be to separate fact from fiction.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes the book so engaging. Brooks keeps you guessing until the very end.
So it's safe to say that Laying Autumn's Dust is more than just, a captivating mystery. It's a story about family, memory, and the elusive nature of truth, all told through the lens of these richly drawn characters in this evocative setting. I'm already hooked. But before we get too caught up in the world of the novel, I want to rewind a bit and talk about Brooks' journey to publication. Was it an easy road for him?
Well, you know the publishing world. It's rarely a straight shot to success, and Brooks definitely faced his fair share of challenges along the way.
Oh, I bet. Tell me more.
Well, imagine this. He sent out around 80 queries to literary agents, and only just two, requested to read the full manuscript.
80 queries. That's rough. Talk about a test of perseverance. But clearly, he didn't give up.
Not at all. Just when he was about to explore self-publishing, a friend connected him with Copilot Publishing. And the rest, as they say, is history.
It sounds like it was quite the journey for him. But what a testament to his dedication.
Right.
It makes you wonder, what's the driving force behind this desire to tell stories?
Yeah, from what I gather, Brooks has always been fascinated by the power of storytelling, by its ability to connect us, to make us think, to help us make sense of the world. He said that stories have a way of revealing truths that we might not otherwise see. And I think that's a theme that runs throughout his own work, doesn't it?
That's really interesting. So it's not just about entertaining the reader, right? It's about making them think, making them question, maybe even making them a little uncomfortable at times.
Precisely. He's not afraid to delve into difficult topics, to explore the darker side of human nature. And I think that's what gives his writing such depth and complexity, don't you think?
It's like he's peeling back the layers of human experience,
Yeah.
showing us the good, the bad, and everything in between. And speaking of peeling back layers, I have to know more about this title, Laying Autumn's Dust. It's so evocative, so haunting. Where did it come from?
Well, believe it or not, it's actually inspired by a line from Shakespeare's King Lear, laying autumn's dust.
Wow, I love that. A little Shakespearean inspiration. But what is it about that image, that phrase, that resonated so deeply with Brooks, I wonder?
Well, he's mentioned how much he loves the imagery of dust settling,
Uh,
of things coming to an end, but also this idea of renewal, of a new season about to begin. And I think that duality is really at the heart of the novel, isn't it?
mm,
It's the story about confronting the past, about letting go of old wounds, but also about finding hope and the possibility of a new beginning.
it's like the dust settles, and we're left to pick up the pieces and create something new from the remnants. And I imagine that sense of renewal is especially poignant, given the context of Brooks, writing this book while caring for his terminally ill father.
Absolutely. You can feel that emotional weight woven into the fabric of the story, can't you? That sense of loss and grief, but also that glimmer of hope, that resilience of the human spirit.
It's making me think about how our own lives are made up of these layers, you know what I mean, these different seasons, and how we carry the weight of our experiences with us, both the good and the bad. Like they say, you can't have the sunshine without the rain, right?
Exactly. And I think that's what makes Laying Autumn's Dust such a powerful and ultimately hopeful story. It acknowledges the darkness, the pain, but it also reminds us that even in the midst of loss, there's always the possibility of growth, of healing, of finding our way back to the light.
Beautifully said. It sounds like Laying Autumn's Dust is a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it, huh? A story that prompts reflection and maybe even a little soul-searching. And from what I've read, the critical response has been, well, overwhelmingly positive.
It has. Readers are captivated by the multiple perspectives, the atmospheric setting, and that slow-burning mystery that keeps you guessing until the very end. Many have praised Brooks' ability to create such richly drawn characters, characters that feel real, flawed, and ultimately relatable.
Yeah, it's like you're right there with them, experiencing their joys and sorrows, their triumphs and failures. And with each perspective, you get a new piece of the puzzle, a new layer of understanding.
Exactly. And because each narrator has their own unique voice and perspective, well, you find yourself constantly reevaluating their reliability.
Ooh, that's so good. You're never quite sure who to trust or what to believe, which of course keeps you hooked. I'm also curious about the ending. Without giving too much away, how does Brooks wrap up this complex narrative? Does he tie everything up neatly? Or are there some loose ends left for the reader to ponder?
That's a great question, and I think it speaks to the brilliance of Brooks's writing, that even though he provides a satisfying conclusion to the mystery, there's a lingering ambiguity, a sense that some questions may never have definitive answers, you know?
Ah, the mark of a truly great story. It stays with you, keeps those gears turning, even after you've closed the book.
Precisely. He doesn't shy away from the messy realities of life, you see. The idea that sometimes there isn't a clear-cut right or wrong answer. And I think that's what makes his work so thought-provoking, wouldn't you say?
It's like he's inviting us to have a conversation with the text, to grapple with those unanswered questions and come to our own conclusions. And that's a rare and valuable gift, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's a reminder that the best stories don't just entertain us. They challenge us. They make us think critically about the world around us and our place in it.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, haven't we? Brooks's background, his writing process, the themes he explores, the critical response to the book. Before we wrap up, I wanted to circle back to the man himself. What's next for Mark L. Brooks?
Well, from what I've read, he's expressed a desire to continue writing. And frankly, I think he has a bright future ahead of him. He's a talented storyteller with a unique voice. And given the success of Laying Autumn's Dust, well, I have a feeling we'll be seeing a lot more from him in the years to come.
I have a feeling you're right. And it's exciting to think about what stories he'll choose to tell next. But, even as we look ahead, I find myself drawn back to Laying Autumn's Dust.
Hmm.
And this idea that, well, there's always more than one side to every story.
It's a powerful concept, isn't it? And one that really resonates, It resonates far beyond the pages of a novel. It makes you think about how often we make assumptions about others based on, well, incomplete information, really, on our own limited perspectives.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own narratives, right? To forget that everyone carries their own burdens, their own secrets, their own versions of the truth.
Absolutely. And I think that's what Brooks does so masterfully in this book, don't you think? He reminds us that empathy is a muscle that needs to be exercised, that true understanding, well, it requires us to step outside our comfort zones and consider different points of view.
It's like he's challenging us to be better listeners, better observers, better human beings, really, which is a pretty tall order for a murder mystery, don't you think?
You're right, but I think that's what makes Laying Autumn's Dust such a special book. It transcends genre, it defies expectations, and it leaves you with this profound sense of, well, both the complexity and the fragility of human connection.
Yeah, it's a story that lingers in your mind long after you've turned that final page.
Hmm.
And speaking of lingering, I have to ask, what's the one thing that you're going to take away from this deep dive? What's the nugget of wisdom that you'll be turning over in your mind for days to come?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's so much to unpack here. But if I had to choose, I think it's this idea that even in the face of profound loss, even when the world feels, shrouded in darkness, there's always a glimmer of hope, a possibility for redemption, a chance to find beauty in the ashes.
That's beautifully said. And I think it speaks to the enduring power of stories,
Mhm.
to their ability to comfort us, to challenge us, and to remind us that even in the darkest of times, well, we're not alone.
Exactly. And sometimes all it takes is a single story, a single voice, to illuminate the path forward.
Well, on that note, I think we've done our part to shed a little light on the remarkable work of Mark L. Brooks and his debut novel, Laying Autumn's Dust.
We certainly have. We've explored his journey to becoming an author, delved into the unique narrative structure of his book, and uncovered the deeper themes that lie at its heart.
And we've done it all without giving away any major spoilers, leaving plenty for you, our listeners, to discover on your own.
So if you're looking for a captivating mystery, a thought-provoking exploration of human nature, and a story that will stay with you long after you've turned that final page, then Laying Autumn's Dust is definitely worth adding to your reading list.
We couldn't agree more. Happy reading, everyone, and until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.